In today's episode of Agile After Dark, we take a swing at doing our first online interview with the smoothest and coolest tech coach we know. From getting teams at the highest levels of group development through pair programming to trucking through the barriers of getting teams to be cross-functional. It was a good day and night to have a rockin' podcast we hope you enjoy.
Welcome to Agile After Dark, the podcast that addresses Agile topics not talked about in the light of day. I'm your host, Greg Adams Woodford, sitting here, and over there is our co-host, Brendan Gartley, and resident nerd.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'm a nerd. I'll take it.
Okay. Well, today's episode is kind of I think you're excited about it, Brendan.
I am very excited because, we're trying something a little different. You might be able to hear it already. The audio is a little different. We got a remote guest. I like to say because they're remote and he lives in Texas. It's kind of like Houston. We got a problem. We're in Apollo 13. Right?
Apollo 13
It's
Studios.
in Austin, but it's close enough.
That's right. Apollo 13 Studios.
Yeah.
Undergoing renovations to support remote guests. I think that's a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
And today, our special guest, which we have done all of this technological work, that you could see, if you could see the table and the amount of cables, and we actually don't even know how it's working,
That's true.
to be honest with you. But it's somehow we think it's working, but
we can lose another podcast.
we could, as
We've
we
only
did in the
lost
first
4.
one. That's right. So, but it seems to be working so far, just like Apollo 13 didn't quite make it to the moon, but we think we can at least get back to Earth. We've got a special guest, Rajendra Tella, who I have been working with for over, I think, at least 10 years, if not over that. And Rajendra and I had worked at a company who did a major transformation before it was called transformation, and worked from everything from product management with senior staff all the way down to the team level, and did things that, upon reflection, we looked at and we thought we weren't very good at it when we were doing it back then. But when we look at it now, we were actually pretty good at it, Rajendra. Would you agree?
That's very true. I still haven't come across a team that's doing what we were doing 10 years ago. So,
And Rajendra's specialty really is kind of on the technical side, the CD, CI, all of those kinds of things.
Yeah, I like to call him the Billy D. Williams of tech coaches.
Oh, yeah, baby. That's right. That's right. He's the Lando Calrissian of CD and CI. So we welcome you, Rajendra. We're really happy to have you on the show. And I think this conversation is going to be really good. The episode is called Cross-Function, the Malfunction, Pair Up or Go Down, and it really is about pair programming, which I've got some concerns about, but I'm going to let Brandon start off with his nerd dumb, and we'll start up there and we'll see where we get.
Well, I think we want to make sure we touch base on a couple things, right? Which is the problem teams run into with being siloed as a team against other teams, and also within the teams. And then also we want to discuss in specifics how we as coaches can help teams overcome their problems in this area. And I say we as coaches, I mean gender, can help because I'm certainly not the best person to do that. But before we get into those two topics, I did kind of want to set the table, Greg.
Yeah. Here we go.
I think I'm going to do it.
Here we go. Nerd alert. We need to have a sound bit for that because it's
some version of nerd.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
All right.
Get a life, nerd.
I mean, as we're talking about kind of more advanced concepts within Agile, kind of this cross functional teams and so forth, we're kind of, it's a little bit of step above just the basics of it, right? I wanted to kind of set the table by really getting into discussing like group development and how we see where teams are from an Agile perspective and how that relates to the area of study in psychology. And group development really received a lot of attention after the Second World War and before the 60s. But then after that, the focus in research was really on the individual instead of groups, which actually doesn't surprise me very much. The start of human factors research and software engineering is also mostly focused on individuals and their personality traits for like the last 40 years. So those kind of went hand in hand. We're kind of like looking at the individuals versus kind of as groups. But then as group development stuff has come together, a few different models emerged, and then a few researchers started to aggregate those models into a general group development model. The first ones to do it were Tuckman and Jensen in the 70s, and they had kind of these phases of, you'll like this, Greg, forming, storming, norming, and performing.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. But in the 90s, Susan Whelan, as the prominent psychologist, did a similar aggregation of the existing models, so kind of an updated look at it, that resulted in what's called the Integrated Model of Group Development, or IMGD. And to kind of understand how you measure the different progress in the groups that she put together, she created a group development questionnaire, or the GDQ, to measure how much energy the group is spending on each of the development stages. That survey has 60 questions, and it's actually proven out fairly well. So teams that have high scores that fall into the last stage that I'll describe in a second, finish a project faster. So students perform better on tests if faculty scores high on the GDQ. Intensive care staff save more lives in surgery, for instance, if they score high on it as well. But the four main phases within that, and it kind of when we get towards the last one, it's kind of interesting. The first one is dependency inclusion. So at this stage, there's a lack of feeling of belonging to a group. But after people start feeling safe enough to state their ideas and contribute to how they think the group should work in order to achieve its goals, they are kind of starting to move into the next phase, which is counter dependency and fight, like the fight. Fighting within teams, right? Group members and that have.
Is that like Jack O'Leary fight?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's a story behind that. They'll have to come out at some point. But the group members have to go through a turbulent stage in order to build trust, right? I think we've seen this with teams on a regular basis. But after they feel safe and therefore daring to have these conflicts, they kind of have a sense of loyalty that emerges, right?
Well, what kind of conflicts are you talking about exactly?
It's kind of the concept of after the first phase, they feel like they can start speaking up, right? But then they may have disagreements on, it could be approach. It could be, hey, this is my work, not yours, right? And so that's kind of where that is that kind of fight. Because then it leads in the next, which is trust and structure. So at this stage, the leader's role goes from needing to have been more directive to be more consultative, right? So this is where I kind of get that, the leadership stuff that we talk about on a regular basis. And the communication structure is also more flexible. So the concept of communication is more task related versus relation oriented, right? So you're starting to get into, let's just figure out the work rather than trying to figure each other out. Conflicts still occur, right? But, they're over much faster since the group can communicate. And work satisfaction and cooperation increases together with that cohesion and trust. And then the commitment of the group is higher. So you're really kind of starting to see what we kind of see, right, in teams. But then you kind of get in what is the top, level for this measurement that Whelan came up with. It's called work and productivity. Surprise, surprise. So the team focuses on getting the task done well together, as well as maintaining group cohesion over a long period of time. And people in such high-performing teams often look at their work environment with excitement and joy, and getting work done is easy, and members have a feeling of being a part of the best team ever, right? When we see those really high-functioning teams. But the most important part, kind of as we get into the stuff that we're talking about today, the challenge in this stage is to maintain the effectiveness that they've reached, right? And the most effective groups don't discuss task-related issues 100% of the time. Actually, still spend about 20% discussing how to work together, right? So I think that is going to kind of get into some of the cross-function. The last part that I want to get into, because I thought this was really cool.
Well, hurry up, because I'm about to fall asleep.
I know.
I'm going to ask you to summarize in a second.
Yeah.
So.
Some researchers from Sweden and Brazil, Gren, Torkar, and Felt, attempted a psychological experiment to see if there was a correlation between agile and group development, with the hypothesis that agility measurement has significant convergent validity with regards to group development and measurement. And I won't get into the specifics of the whole thing, and we'll post it on Agile After Dark, so you can check it out if you want. But they found that they are indeed correlated. But it's kind of like a chicken and egg sort of thing. It's really interesting because agile methods are probably harder to implement in new teams than traditional methods, but agility causes groups to mature, and mature groups are needed to have agility.
Is it because the perceived structure of the sort of traditional way of thinking makes people more comfortable as opposed to, hey, you guys got to figure it out? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
The study that I thought was interesting is they kind of felt like, okay, well, if there's teams that are agile, then they're going to automatically fit in that last category of work and productivity. But I think what they found is any sort of new team, they're going to have to go through some of these stages. But I think what they're kind of saying is the causality is that agile kind of accelerates some of these things, which in a more traditional sort of business setting would have taken a lot of time. Like
Right.
you don't have that seem to have that conflict, right?
Yeah, and we see that with teams, right? So if I'm working with a team and coaching them on doing incremental planning, it's a practice. But if the team members don't know how to work with each other or how to collaborate, I can't coach them on doing an incremental planning. I think I gotta step back and fix that, focus on that group collaboration thing. I think that research is totally spot on, right? You got to have a team that knows how to work with each other before we actually start implementing a framework or a new process or a new practice.
Yeah.
So I fell asleep about halfway through. So can you sum up for us that? Because I do actually think, again, when I was paying attention, that was interesting. So can you sum up kind of what those stages are and kind of what it means to us?
Yeah, and I think, because it's this integrated model of group development, so IMGD, and there is a questionnaire with 60 questions to kind of evaluate where teams are. And I thought it was interesting that there was a lot of those things going from dependency and inclusion, the counter dependency and fight, trust and structure, and then work and productivity are a lot of things that, when I say to someone, hey, have you ever seen an agile team that really has it? All of those things that they had in the work and productivity, that last thing, all of those things rang true to me.
Mm-hmm.
But for some of the things that they're, kind of struggling with, particularly at the beginning where they're just like, I have his opinion, you have his opinion, we need to figure out how we can actually communicate. I think it's interesting from an agile perspective because, again, I kind of mentioned it, is that I think if you're really kind of pushing teams and saying like, just keep with it, keep going, that you'll start moving through those phases faster than you would have in kind of a more traditional, environment. And the reason I bring it up in terms of the cross-functional stuff is because you kind of have to reach almost that last part to really, start to really kind of say, okay, I'm willing to let go, right? I'm willing to let go of the things that, because a lot of times the cross-functional teams, and we'll get into this a little bit later, right? But a lot of things that I see when we first start talking about, pair program, any sort of cross-functional work between teams, they're like, well, I'm judged as an individual. That's what my performance is on. So you're telling me to let go of something that I know the best and have someone else start doing that. And at the same time, you're asking me to learn something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, and it's interesting to me because I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if we could take this questionnaire and kind of take it to our teams and see kind of where they are on those scales, right? And, from when we first start with them maybe to where they are at the end. Because we have like these agile maturity things and stuff like that, which I think have a lot of value. But, there's other studies that I saw that was around this which basically said, well, if you looked at agility against that, and in fact, there's another study that they did that was basically saying, well, if we tell them about, we have a control group that we tell about this integrated model of group development and other ones we don't, and see kind of, if they're aware of that and like after a 2-hour kind of discussion, if that makes a difference. It didn't really, except for in retrospectives and customer acceptance tests, interestingly enough. But I'm not surprised about the retrospectives piece, right? Yeah. But anyway, so that I kind of wanted to set the table and kinds of, as we're talking through these things, we can kind of maybe like look back and say, well, where, if our team's at this level, then what sort of, challenges do we have at, kind of introducing some of these ideas?
Well, and I think for me, if you take the less pedantic route on this conversation, which I used earlier in the when Brett and I were
impressed
talking,
with the word choice though.
It really boils down to echo what Rajendra said, is that this is a human problem to solve first, to getting people to trust, getting the teams to the point where they can actually have a conversation that potentially feels negative, but that is required to get work done, because there's never going to be, again, this is what I always say, at home, your kids never do what they say they're going to do, and your vacation gets ruined because something happens and your garage door doesn't open one morning and you have to get your car fixed or whatever, you get a flat tire. And that's just the human condition. When we come to work, we think, well, everything should just work robotically at work. And so we treat it differently, but really work is just a whole bunch of humans trying to get things done. It's
like
no different.
Kids can like bust through the door right now and like
right now, and we're watching to make sure that doesn't happen. So we know that might happen at any point in time. And because of the technological advances of Apollo 13 Studios, we can see him. So we will know when that happens. Right. So I think that sums that up pretty well.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think we wanted to kind of transition to Greg into, what I, introduced as kind of some of the challenges that we're facing, right?
Well, I think, for me, at being how have I been labeled so far in the 10 episodes or so we have? I've been a finance guy,
You've been
a communist at one point.
EVP of being a dick.
Yeah, that's also one of them. So I've got a number of hats I'm wearing. They're pretty diverse, if we were going to be honest about it.
Yeah, they kind of all have some similar ties.
If you do come from a business perspective, and we'll get into more of this later, but it is, pair programming. What, you're going to have this one person doing, this work, but you're going to have another person added to it to do the same amount of work. So aren't you just completely wasting 50% of capacity? And so that's one question that a business person is going to ask. Like, what are you doing? What's this pair programming crap? Like, you're wasting 50% of capacity if you have two people working on the same thing. Secondly is, how do you get a team to be able to not specialize, but to focus on the whole team being successful and completing work, regardless of what comes at that team? As a business person, what I want is a team that can produce anything. I can make them build spreadsheets, I can make them build process, I can make them do software, but a well-functioning team can tackle any problem. And that's, as a business person, what I want to build is a capable team. So you have this concept of component teams, which are specialized teams. And sometimes if it's a DBA or like specific to testing, there are just certain ways people's brains are wired a certain way, and DBAs are weird and good test people are weird. They're good at what they do because they're wired a certain way. But you want to try to minimize those things because they're typically very expensive. They're typically very focused. And so you want to make sure that you have the, teams that can focus on solving a business problem and delivering it, right?
You thought I talked long.
You just talked like 45 minutes. And
none of your research
stories start before 1945. Everything you do starts at like 1940. Well, in 1940, that makes it better. I don't get, so don't get on my case.
No, because you have to talk about where we
Good
came
day,
from.
sir. Good day.
Good day. So anyway, Regender, kind of along those lines, I mean, I know you probably run into this is, the siloing of teams, it's coming out of waterfall. I think it's, understandable, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
one of the things that, with that first transition, and we'll start to get after the break, I think we'll kind of get into some of the specifics of how we attack it. But what are some of the things that you've observed?
You both talk long, just so you know.
How dare you?
I said good day.
So, what the typical pattern is, if they're first time going through a change, coming from waterfall to an agile, they're put together as a team. They do 2 weeks planning, but when it comes to execution on their sprint plan, right, everybody grabs a story and runs with it, right? And no, they don't talk to each other at all, right? This is my story. Here's my another story, right? We both are working on it independently, and come back on day 8 or day 9, they finish their code, and it's like, meeting with the product owner to accept the story, right? That's very typical that we see in the beginning, right? So I think, as we talk about cross-functional, there are several techniques that helps ensure how we make the whole team work collaboratively together.
Yeah, and kind of interesting, to both of you. Now that I've simmered down a little bit, I'm kind of curious about, the teams when they're kind of coming in. I mentioned a little bit earlier about how, I'm being evaluated as an individual on an annual basis based on how many widgets I've created. I mean, it's fairly basic, right? But that still has to change. But even if that's not the case, now you're putting me on this team with these people that maybe don't know as much as I do in a particular area, but I don't know as much as they do. And you know what? That's fine, because I spent so much time learning this, whether it's, this sort of language or what have you. I mean, what are some of the things that, and just not from a, let's get people, but like the conversation that you guys have had with those sort of teams to kind of say, okay, I get it, but what's, here's the value out of what we're trying to achieve.
Well, I think that people, if you express that concept to them in an abstract way, they're like, yeah, that totally makes sense. And then when you start to have them
That concept
sort out
being
the
like
work.
cross-functional.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's like, yeah, that makes sense as a team, especially the manager gets it. The manager's like, oh yeah, exactly. That's definitely what we're going to need to do. And then the team looks at it and they're like, yeah, it makes sense, but I don't know how it's going to happen. Part of it is driven through just their own personal career path, HR stuff that we talked about in past episodes, right? It's that you're leading them down a path and they feel like, oh, well, if I just am just doing everything, then I'm not going to be known for anything, right?
Well, it's interesting that you say the manager says it makes sense, but then they're like, I need to get this thing in by this date.
Oh yeah, well, but that's the way it is. And then again, the team also thinks, yeah, it makes total sense on paper, but when you have to start breaking the work down, and you have mainframe people trying to learn Java, and then Java people, I'm not learning mainframe. Mainframe's like old. Well, you know what? There's a lot of mainframe that ain't going nowhere anytime soon. So you just better get on board with that, and you probably should learn what that technology was. And so, I think that again, it becomes more of a personal path issue.
I mean, Regender, as someone that's gone through kind of the technical spectrum, right, of learning a variety of things. I mean, what was kind of like that journey for you in terms of, you learned a kind of a specific thing, but then kind of kept growing? Was that because you just individually did that, or was it, you were part of teams? I don't even know, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so it depends on the attitude, right? This stuff is hard. When we said, okay, I've known as this rock star developer, and in my organization, I'm this principal developer. Everybody comes to me as the go-to guy for latest things on Java or Spring framework or whatever that is, right? And now I'm put on this team, and now you're asking me to be the team member, right? They don't look at me as a principal developer. They don't look at me as the decision maker for the team, right? I'm part of the team. I have to, you're asking me to, put my title at the door, right? It's hard. It takes time. It takes time to realize what the journey look like, and it's not just the individual but also the ecosystem, right? The leadership has to start embracing, hey, we still have these levels or grades that we have to honor in the HR system to pay grade and promotions and stuff, right? But when it comes to the team-based performance, right, you are part of the member, and how you evolve your role into that. I mean, personally for me, I started as a Java developer, right?
Yeah.
I worked with majority of the time working for educational companies, right? Building learning management systems and content management systems, right? And then there's this thing called Agile, and this person here said, "Hey, we got to do Agile."
Who was that? Who
I don't
that
know.
person?
I will say though, Regender, to your view, you're reminding me about something too. That remember the transition that we went to having we had essentially the development managers, which was a path, right? I'm a development manager, and we had a hierarchy of CTO down who was very focused on that. And then when we actually went to a real agile based model where the managers of the technology team didn't have teams reporting into them, they just really were HR managers. Remember, that was a hard transition. Do you remember?
Yeah, totally. I can't forget at all, right? This is, I was a developer.
What you did to him.
Then a scrum master, and then I was crazy to I wanted to get into management, and I thought going to an MBA was the only way to get into management, right? This is way back when. And then I got my MBA and learned.
You fell into that trap too, huh?
Yeah, totally, but no student debt. And then learn how to be a manager in corporate America and come to work. And then here we are going through the transformation, right? Just become a fresh manager and trying to manage people, manage work. And then the organization says, you know what? We have self-organizing teams. So I had to unlearn majority of what I learned in the business school, right? And then I started picking up coaching, and totally like the engineering managers, which is what I was doing at that time, became very thin layer of administrative work, and majority is coaching the teams on how to maintain good CI/CD practices, how to improve their craftsmanship, right? And that was an eye opener, right? And then, but it's again, depending on the individuals and how they see the progression, on whether you embrace it, the path, and accept the change, the new way of working, right? I've also seen developers who said, what, I'm the principal developer. I want to be the principal developer. I don't want to be treated as a scrum developer on a team, and good day to you, sir.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we want to kind of talk about, build on, that sort of journey that a lot of, people, kind of in your field go through, and how we can get them to get to that, work and productivity level that I talked about before, so that the team is really just working together. But I think it's a natural place to take a break.
And maybe do some plugs, Brandon.
Yeah.
How about that? How about the brand new and yet to be finished, however, website, which is
agileafterdark.com.
And you'll go there, you'll see what we've got started. My daughter did the logo, which we're working on still.
Really cool.
But we've got some things going there. Brandon's done a nice job of putting that all together. He is the muscle behind the show. It's flabby muscle. It's like Michigan.
Yeah.
It's like Michigan muscle. Okay.
Yeah.
So
It's called beer gut muscle.
So for those of you who
It's a keg.
listen to the
It's a keg
podcast,
versus a six pack.
know what that means. But but we've got a brand new site. We've got also some emails that you can send feedback to.
Yeah.
Feedback at agileafterdark.com. I think there's a rants one for my thing.
It's GAW feedback at
which
Agile After Dark. But we might need to just have a rants one.
yeah.
Because they may be ranting about, hey, everyone, you two, let Regender talk more.
Yeah, which I think will definitely be the case. So we'll just have a checkbox at the beginning of you guys talk too much. So anyway, give us your feedback, and visit the site. And we're excited. We've got about 9 episodes now in, and we're going to do more as we get as Apollo 13 Studios becomes more effective and more technologically sophisticated. We're going to do more stuff. So back after the break. What? You just told me it was going through the mics on the phone, the headphones thing.
True.
Jesus Christ.
Jeez.
You change your story every 30 seconds. For fuck's sake. Good day, sir.
I said good day.
All right.
All right.
Here we're going to go. We're really going to go.
As you know, it normally takes us 3 times anyway.
It does. It does. All right. Hey, Sass. Okay. Welcome to
Hour 4.
So welcome back to Agile After Dark. Today's episode is called Cross-Function the Malfunction, Pair Up or Go Down. We're talking with Regender Tella, who is our remote guest in our new technologically fancy Apollo 13 studios. And hey, before we get started, we should probably talk about the drinks that we are consuming. So Brandon, I think I just heard some irritating noises while we were trying to come back and transition. What was that all about?
Yeah, that was from Margarito in true salute to Regender being down in Texas. I decided to make a frozen margarita. Although I was thinking about bringing out some Colt 45.
Oh,
Billy D.
Or Colt 45. That's true. Or Lone Star. It's also a nice Texas beer, right?
I haven't seen that up here.
Yeah, Regender, what are you drinking?
I'm staying sober today, so this is Shiner Bach. This is my new favorite. It's a Texan thing. I have to do it to feel that I'm in Texas.
and Regender is relatively new to the Austin area, so he's trying to fit in with the Texans. Good luck with that. having I'm half Texan, so I understand.
I have to drink Shiner and then drive a truck.
Right. So, and I'm doing. Oh, I've broken. No, I have not. I'm drinking
You went
bourbon.
back. You went back.
So I'm doing my usual bourbon thing. So, so where were we when we left off, Brandon?
Yeah, so we kind of were talking about some of the issues that we've seen. Regender, I think that story of kind of your journey was really illustrative of kind of some of the stuff that we see teams and individuals on teams are dealing with. And I know that with those obstacles and with those issues, and with the understanding that as you mentioned, one person's taking a story off and they're just doing it on their own. And there's some inefficiencies there. Kind of what are some of the approaches that you've seen that have been really successful in kind of really making the team more cross-functional and eliminate that malfunction?
Right. So pairing is one of the many techniques that that agile teams have, right? So I'm going to focus mainly on pairing today, and then we can talk about other techniques if you would like mob programming is another emerging technique, could be another topic for another day. So pairing, what it is having two people work on one problem using one computer. I know we'll
I'm paying for two people to work on one computer. I already spent money on the second computer.
Oh God!
Now I got two computers. I got two people working on one. What the hell is going on? This is out of control, Regender. Help me understand.
Okay, the business people. If you want me to write code, I could write crappy code any day. There's a saying I really like this from Martin Fowler about anybody can write code that computers can understand, but very few people can write code that other humans can understand. It's an art, right? And the techniques like pairing and mob programming, that they're to help that we write good code that can stay long and that can scale. It can change with times, right? So I could, if a business person wants a feature to be out the door fast, we could do it. Developers can do it any day, right? But we're talking about going slow so that we can go faster in the long run. So pair programming may seem slow in the beginning, but it actually helps. The main benefits of pair programming is having good quality code. We are building quality into it, right? And there is, there is a myth that when you see two people working on one problem, we think of it it's they're duplicating the effort, right? It's not really duplicate. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm kind of curious, and maybe I'm going to jump the gun on Greg here because this is normally the type of question he would ask. But, you talked about two people working on one problem on one computer, but generally people, are bringing different skills or have different experience and work in different things, Java or mainframe, as Greg mentioned. Like, is the expectation that every team member eventually will kind of get to the same skill level?
Yeah, so when you introduce this pairing technique, you have that upfront investment of bringing that gap, right? Bridging that gap between the skill set and technologies. But after, it's you are talking about few sprints, a matter of few sprints, we bring in that some level of alignment. And of course, it's not going to be, we having a principal developer pair with intern, will not be an efficient thing in the beginning, but after you bridge that gap, there are different patterns that you could follow. Have same level of developers pair. That's usually the recommended way. But I know there are companies that follow like a most radical approach that anybody could pair with anybody, right? Even though there is some upfront cost. I worked with a team that actually, come in and the first thing in the day they would do, put their names in a pot and then pick their names, and then that's how they pick up their pair, right? Whoever comes up as a pair, that's like the most extreme pair programming, and I think that's like the highest level of maturity that I've seen. But going back to what the efforts, right? We said two people working on it. The myth is about having duplicating efforts, but there are studies done on this topic. It's not new. It's been there for decades.
So around like 1945, for instance, there may be a study that's around 1945 that Brandon hasn't come. He actually has come across it. He's just
You want me to go back to the 1700s?
Yeah. He did that on one. So.
Right. So one of the signatory, Alistair Cockburn, and his team has done a study called the cost and benefits of pair programming. What they came up with, they've done research, interviews, and they've done controlled experiments with teams that are practicing pair programming. And what they came up with, there's a increase of 15% of cost in software development when they do pair programming. So it's not really doubling, right? You're paying 15% more to get 50% more on quality, right? So their study found out the defects rate dropped 50%. So you get that big return on investment. You're paying for 15%, but your quality is jumped by 50%, and you have a better design. And two people working on it, it improves the accountability of the code, maintainability. So that's their use, your immediate jump, business person.
Yeah. Well, before you jump in though, I'm kind of curious here because there's conflicting Greg's rants here, right? Team owns quality. Are you making me spend money?
I don't care. Like quality what does quality mean to me as a business person? You can say, oh, we want to have quality code. I don't really care about quality code. I just want something delivered. I want to ship something. So how can you translate that to me? What I would rather hear as a business person is that you're building capacity for the team to have more skills to tackle more problems in a more effective way, as opposed to, because quality, I'm not actually really disagreeing with you, but people, most business people and managers are like, well, yeah, well, quality, who cares? It's like, what if the customer isn't complaining, then why do I care about good code? Like they don't realize technical debt, all those things, but it's like they don't care. So the argument for this approach is hard if you're saying, well, yours have better quality. Like, I don't care about quality. I want stuff shipped.
Of course, you want to have stuff shipped, right? You could make a quick decision now and then ship it fast today. But what we're talking about, having a good quality code, the other term that we use in the developer community is clean code. So having the clean code will help you maintain the same cost for each feature in the long run, right? If you don't, the opposite side, if you have a poor quality code, you may get a feature done in, say 80 story points today. But if you don't maintain the code quality, the same feature would cost you a lot more than 80 points after 6 months or 1 year. So you're paying no matter what, either today or later, right? But having a clean code and maintainable code will actually give you the same developer productivity, and you'll be able to maintain the same pace for releasing features to your customers.
So maybe that's one of we transition into what's some of the obstacles to this pair programming thing. I think one is describing this to the business people so that they buy in, because it is absolutely non-intuitive when you present this to somebody. It just doesn't make any sense, because people are focused on, even if you can convince them to think about what a backlog means and what prioritization means, then you're like, oh yeah, and we're going to throw pair programming on top of that. Oh, let's just add on to the fire, where they all just went through this whole transition in their head. Like, how do we better describe what this is so that people can, business people specifically can get an understanding of it?
Yeah, I hear things like, okay, we just reorganized all our teams, and maybe they didn't organize it very well in the way that we would traditionally look at it, right? We have all our mainframe people over here, we have our infrastructure people over here, we have, so that, you kind of have the same skill base, but you kind of maybe probably hit a plateau to a certain level, right? In terms of this. But then also at the same time, we have, teams that have multiple stacks within the team, right? So how do you deal with that if they're like dealing in basically they really are siloed, and they're saying, well, you're going to tell me and we're vendors, right? Oh, we have vendor stuff too. How are we supposed to jump across?
That's a good point.
It's not just the quality alone, right? It's like having that collective code ownership on a product, right? Improving the skill set across across the team or across the organization, right? We also have this thing called truck factor, right? If you have like a developer that like you can give you a feature today, but what happens if he hit by a truck tomorrow, right? The knowledge of
truck factor. That's not what.
By the way, just so you know,
I thought that was some sort of.
I leaned in on that one. I was like truck factor, and I just wrote that down. That's a good one, truck factor.
Oh my god!
So
I thought you from Texas. All of a sudden, you're like all into trucks, and that maybe that was where the reference is coming to. But no, it makes sense.
Right. So what happens if you get into that situation? So pair programming and few other techniques help spread that knowledge across the team and across multiple teams. And it's not that. And the study, going back to the study, that also revealed they not only produce better quality code, spread the knowledge, but it actually makes the development enjoyable. People actually reported that they actually like coming to work, talking about the human side of it, right? They like coming, they know their team members better, and their work environment become more enjoyable because of pair programming.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of interested in that part of it, particularly from kind of the psychological learning standpoint of, they reported that they really enjoyed it. I know with the teams that I've worked in the past, there's been a lot on the team level. There's been a lot of buy-in. It's like, oh yeah, we need to become more cross-functional. But then, it's kind of like that implicit memory of like, well, I just know this stuff and this is how I do it, and I can't explain why this is the way I do it, right? Versus kind of that explicit, okay, we're having conversations, and that's how we kind of develop the memory and the learning and so forth. I mean, that's kind of, I'm curious from your standpoint, Rajender, is that, what are some of the things that you've seen that really help kind of break through that initial hesitancy, with the literally sitting at the same computer? Is there like certain roles within that and how they work together?
Well, hygiene is one.
Yeah, of course.
Aren't famous for that. So let's put that right out there at the beginning, right?
I'm not going to give a comment since we're in the same room.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Maybe we could use a foam wall.
Just build a ball 13 around every team.
So this got a little bit more rules around it, right? The two people, they have distinctive roles. The person who is at the keyboard is called the driver, and the person who is pairing with them called navigator, right? And they need to change their roles very often, right? I think the most recommended is around 15 minutes, because if you keep on just one person at the keyboard, the other person, you will start losing him or her after 15 minutes, or you keep it longer, right? The shorter you have, the more engagement you get. And the way they engage, the driver and navigator, is the left brain and right brain, right? So I heard you talk about one of the podcasts earlier, Brandon, right? The left brain is very focused on the detail, right? You task at hand, focusing on the parts of a system, and the right brain is big picture, the whole system view, and looking at are we writing good code, or is this duplicating, or what's the maintainability of it, right? So, and then there is a study about you can have our human brain can only do left brain or right brain at a time. It can multitask both of them. And then the study said there's only 2% of people who could actually do that, right? And then I happen to fall in the other 98% of people. So having a pair practice actually brings that full mind to the table, right? So you have both sets of minds at the table.
Yeah, so Rajendra, are you sure these studies you're citing aren't like my wife's study when she just wants me to do something? She's like, well, no, there's a study. And I'm like, well, I don't know about this study. Well, no, there's a study. You need to do this. I'm like, I don't know about this study. Are you just like citing studies for no good reason, or are these real studies? Like, I'm afraid to ever put you and Brandon together because it'll be like nerd.
We make a good
central.
pair.
It'll be like research central.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get the links to those studies. I gotta put it
Absolutely, yeah. Say Brandon and I are pairing, right? We play this driver navigator role thing, right? But we got to switch the pairs also, right? There is this, I can't be pairing with Brandon forever, right? I'm gonna be bored. I'm not gonna learn anything new, right? I'm only sharing knowledge with Brandon, but I need to switch my partner at a certain time.
Now,
So
with the time, so sorry to interrupt you, but do you finish a story first before you do that, or is it not story related?
So story is one pattern. Right? So there are multiple ways of switching the pairs, right? So you could do time based. You say, you know what, for this day, these are the pairing partners, and then come next day you have another partner. Or you could say, like you said, at the story level, you are my partner for the life cycle of the story. Or, if I'm introducing this to a new team that's have never done pair programming and they're not super comfortable, I might have them start at a sprint level. It's a beginning of the sprint during a sprint planning event. Maybe let's say pick your partner and you are the pairs for this sprint, right? And then come next sprint you switch it. That's how I start it, right? And then the next level would be at a story level, but the most extreme I've seen is at the day level, right? They do pair at the task level, and you got to have really good planning in place and your coding practices in place to actually make that context switch happen at the day or hour level, right? That's where I've seen. This is going back to our old days. The team that I was on 10 years ago, we were actually doing it on a daily basis or task level. That requires a lot of maturity to actually get there.
Yeah, it's kind of like you said, like anything that we introduce to teams, right? You kind of want to not overwhelm them, but at the same time, sometimes it is just like, let's just try this. It's just make it difficult at the beginning rather than easing into it. I can see both ways.
So you're kind of against developer monogamy. I mean, monogamy. Damn it! No, we couldn't deliver that line. That's going to get edited out.
Okay, go ahead.
Developer polygamy.
No,
that's all I was going to say. I was just trying to make a stupid joke, and I couldn't deliver. Screwed that up.
Can't say his own name and can't deliver on a joke.
Come on, that was a funny thing of the bit, and I scred it up.
Yep, exactly.
All right.
So along those lines. It may actually just stay in there. Along those lines, let's take a quick break, and Greg can really plan out his
gather myself
and just be ready to zing with it. So send your feedback to feedback@agileafterdark.com, and we'll be right back.
So swingers. It's like, just pick your guy. Like, I'm gonna pick my guy. Like, hey, I'm just like, it's not like. That was the whole time I was thinking. You're like, well, some radical people just choose a different person every time, and some people just want to deal with the same people. And I'm just like, where is this going? What a rock! I don't know. I heard this story about in Arizona. There's this thing where there was supposedly, I'm sure it's like an urban legend. There was a swinger community in this subdivision, and if you wanted to be a part of the swingers, you put this purple rock out on the sidewalk. That was the story. I don't know if it's true. That was the story. So
what we should do is put a rock outside the team room.
Yeah, it's like,
we're open for pair programming.
Hey, pick whoever you want. I'm bored with this guy. I need some new action.
All right, we're back from the break, and I think we've had a lot of good conversations today, right? In terms of the way that we see teams evolve and kind of get where they need to get to, and I think some of those levels that I talked about at the beginning, in order to really achieve that and kind of do that 20% concentration on how do we kind of improve ourselves, this pair programming stuff really fits into that. And with some of the challenges that we've seen, selling it to the managers, hey, where's my utilization? Like, how? Wait.
Oh, utilization chart.
Right? Yeah. I mean,
data. I need reports.
Yeah, I need my dashboard.
What's everybody doing?
And I've got 100% of 2 people, and they're kind of like doing, shared work and so forth, right? Left brain, right brain, I don't really care. But I think, we've kind of talked through some of the benefits. But I am kind of curious in terms of, where we're going forward with pair programming, and are there ways for teams, if they have some of those obstacles from the management side, what are some of the ways that they can kind of do their thing to show the value?
So here's why I will just step in and say, Regender and I have a history of doing what we like to call kind of stealth projects or stealth agile, where we just went out and did it and proved, the benefits, and then showed it after the fact, because there was too much resistance to convince somebody, and it wasn't worth the time, frankly. When the managers typically aren't that, if they're any worth their weight, they're not that consumed with the day-to-day. So I don't know, Regender, if you have some ideas about how, if you're struggling with, having a paired programming concept introduced into a team, how you might be able to approach that, in a way that is less threatening to a manager who says, don't stop wasting my time.
Right. It may not be the managers, right? It could be the team itself, right? You won't have, right? So, what I've seen working is the low-hanging fruit, right? When I introduce a concept, if I have a couple of people who are on board, right, they started pairing, and you could immediately, the other members started seeing the interaction, the collaboration between the 2 people, and that's like, that's how the movement starts, right? You have 2 people started doing it, they're liking it, they're producing better code, and they're having fun, and then the other people start saying, oh, you know what, I should try that, I should try that, right? You'll probably have another pair, right? You may still have that, one rockstar developer. It may take months to get that person on board, right? But you at least have the momentum going on, right?
So would you say that the 2 main obstacles are the rockstar developer, who's kind of the lone wolf, doing my own thing, and then the management? Those are probably the 2 biggest obstacles you have. But if you can somehow neutralize those 2 things, the teams typically like the concept and like working that way.
Right. Yeah, we have seen, majority of the teams that we work with, you will have some champions, right? You got to look at, as a coach, you got to identify those champions who could be your change agents within the team. Right? It's like the ground up approach, right?
Change
and then
agent.
start working with it.
I love that. A little edification there for you, Greg.
Change agent.
Excuse me. Well, I think this is great, and I think you left us with a lot to think about, and I know I'm going to be taking this stuff back to my teams, because kind of the way that you described, how the pairing really works and those roles, and kind of thinking about left brain, right brain, the truck factor. I'm definitely bringing that back with me. But yeah,
don't forget about developer monogamy.
Developer monogamy.
Don't leave that out.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, it's evolving right now.
Yeah.
We see teams distributed now, right? So how do we do distributed pair programming? Right? There's a whole suite of tools around that, and it's still like in the early phases of it, right? And then mob programming is, I like to see it as an extension of pair programming, right? If you can't sell pair programming, think of selling mob programming, right?
What exactly is that? I mean, is mobs just like multiple people just?
And I smell a different podcast coming
out. Yeah, right. Totally right.
Exactly.
It's the whole team concept, right? Yeah, I would love to chat about that sometime.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, Regender, man, really good having you on the show. Thanks for putting up with our technology discovery. But Houston, I don't think we have a problem anymore.
We'll see.
No, it's an honor. I like to be the first, right? I'm the first remote guest on Agile After Dark, right?
Yeah, we'll definitely have you on again, and I'll bring my little model Millennium Falcon just to.
I was gonna say thanks, Lando. Thanks, Lando.
All right, but everyone, again, if you have questions, Sass is telling you, just send it to feedback@agileafterdark. And if you want some additional rants, send it to GAW, G-A-W, feedback@agileafterdark, and we'll see you next time.
What the hell is that? Brandon, we're recording. What are you doing? What the hell? Brandon, we're recording. What are you doing?
Hey, I'm making a margarita.
He's making margarita.
Oh, it's margarita.
Well, priorities.
Oh.